Hey friends, on our podcast today, we're going to talk about a couple of really, really important Supreme Court rulings. One that's landed in our favor, another one that has huge implications in terms of America's health long term. We're also going to highlight why redistricting in Indiana was so important, why the dropping of the ball from my perspective on this issue can have catastrophic consequences at these midterms, and why the midterms are critical to our continued success as Americans and the continued implementation of our president's agenda. Major stuff. I mean, I'm having nightmares thinking about what it was like only a few years ago under the previous administration as it related to civil rights, religious liberties, and a host of other things that we had to fight. We're going to talk about that in our podcast today. I think you'll find it very informative.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
Hey, man, we're excited to be with you guys, and we just say he is risen because we just celebrated an amazing Easter weekend, and of course he is risen every day on this podcast, but it was an amazing weekend, and it was so good seeing just everybody out, friends, family, guests, new people. We had tons of new people, and I want to take a moment just to thank everybody involved. We have so many of our, folks that we encourage people to serve a service, worship a service, and that means, sticking around. So we had a lot of people that were serving. Of course, we did 2 services on Friday, 1 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. That's a lot of serving, and it's a big team, and I want to give a big shout out. And also, we were just moments ago talking to our wonderful producer here, Matthew, because the social media presence was just outstanding. My wife likened it to one shining moment, the NCAA tournament recap. We had our Sunday recap out there, and it was I was there, and I was inspired watching the video. So great job, Matthew. He's right over there. You guys can't see him, but he's right over there, and he's the man.
All the work behind the scenes. Yes.
All the work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you had any comments about the weekend, but
no, I thought we had some great messages, really encouraging messages. Presence of God, hungry hearts.
Yeah.
Hearts who are hungry, just in our crazy culture today, to find the plumb line of Jesus Christ, and declare it. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I got to pray with a number of people. I love it when men. One man was just so overcome. He could hardly communicate. He could hardly speak, just because he couldn't put any words to what the Holy Spirit was doing in him. It was just, kind of just a wonderful heavenly meltdown. And I love it when that happens, because sometimes when God touches us like that, it's just more than we can put words to. But he was moved and powerfully touched. And I heard that from a lot of the folks who were up at the altars, ministering. Yeah. And I talked with Hannah today with our tap technology that we've employed.
Yeah.
How's that working, Hannah? But what's really, really exciting is people are doing that. I think we had over 1,000 taps on Sunday,
nice.
and many of those were people who were getting the follow-up information after receiving the Lord. So we're going to follow up with them this week. I'm very, very excited about that. And we
got these. For those to know, we got these nifty little tap cards that you're going to see in front of your seats.
They look like little bullseyes.
Yeah.
Little plastic bullseyes.
The new technology, a little chip. You tap your phone, and all of a sudden it pulls up the video.
It's for convenience and ease and all that stuff. But in addition, I just want to highlight a couple of news items from this weekend. One was the Artemis clip that you sent me. Talk a little bit about that. That was, you're in an area of course, space, voyage. When I think of science, I think of that's like the epitome of science, right? Figuring all that out.
Pretty much, yeah.
And yet we're seeing some incredibly godly voices in an arena where it's not always welcome. So to share about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I fly on an airplane sometimes, and there'll be moments be like, what's holding me up? Physics, right? Can you imagine you're in the shuttle or spacecraft, whatever it is, and you're orbiting all the way out to the far reaches of the moon and back. I mean, just the thought of like what's holding me back, gravity and the laws of nature. Good thing we have a God who controls physics, and physics doesn't change at a whim and fancy. Like there's order, so much order that we can actually control it to a certain degree. We get people all the way to the moon and back.
Yeah,
that's crazy, right?
It's remarkable.
In the middle of all of this, you have one of the astronauts. His name is Victor Glover. Basically, it's a video clip that we saw.
Yeah.
I mean, just honoring, talking about Easter, honoring God. You can tell like he was kind of trying to hold back like the passion he had because he was talking to a audience of different background, but he was just at the same time bold with his faith. He just look at this planet. You see that God built this. I'm paraphrasing. Build this beautiful planet for us. You know,
so he's live on national television, and he's giving glory to God, and he's stating the obvious. There he is floating out in this massive cosmos, and the one thing that sticks out that's radically different from the surroundings is the fact that planet Earth looks like it was specifically created to house human life. So imagine that, because it was. And he's just, he's pointing out the obvious, but giving glory to God. And I love the way all the other astronauts all kind of put their hands in and gave a collective of a fist bump there at the end. But what a cool thing. Yeah. And he's not the first astronaut that has expressed gratitude, to God and worship of God, in outer space. I think I saw a list where there's a number of others who quoted from scriptures or, things like that. I think when you're out there, it's so awesome to realize that there is truly something amazing, about our planet. So praise God for him.
Yeah, that was
We also had an incredible situation. This was right after church on Sunday. I was tracking the news down on this, but we had an F-15 crew member that was ejected from an aircraft that was shot down over Iran. The crew member survived more than 24 hours in the mountains while wounded. We had 200 soldiers from a special operations unit participate in the rescue. The F-15, it says, was shot down with a shoulder-fired missile. He was in an incredibly hostile situation. He hid in a crevice in the mountains and was found through U.S. technology. And the officer's first words after ejecting were, quote, "God is good." This is going to be like made for motion picture type story here. First of all, I just want to say this. Thank God. We talk about like morale and why people are signing up to be part of our armed forces like never before. This was not the case under the Biden administration. They couldn't do anything to get people to sign up and to be willing to fight for our country. That's not the case anymore. And I think it goes back to leadership. President Trump had to make a really difficult decision. Do you enlist the efforts of literally thousands of people to go after one soldier? Or do you just write it off as a military loss? We can go back recently to the departure from Afghanistan, where the Biden administration, I think, left 12 soldiers that were murdered there, killed there, and left, I don't know how many billions of dollars worth of technology. And basically the message to everybody who fought and lost their lives or shed their blood in Afghanistan for America was, it didn't really matter. We're out of here. And if we lose some soldiers along the way and give up, billions and billions of dollars worth of military technology, no big deal. Nobody in the media complained about that, but they were complaining about, the cost to go rescue this one soldier. Of course, we had Hillary, and when she was in office, leaving the 4 Benghazi people behind. And President Trump, love him or hate him, this man took leadership, took initiative, mobilized our armed forces, went in, took care of business, and recovered this man. And again, I just think it makes me proud to be an American. And if I'm one of those guys shot down in some foreign country, I want to know that my president and our nation thinks about me and is willing to do whatever it takes to get me out. As I'm there, the whole reason I'm there is to protect our country. So when you see that kind of aggressive, bold, pro-American, pro-military leadership from our president, I just applaud him.
Yeah, can you imagine? You're sending a team in, you're going in to rescue a person, knowing that you might lose your life rescuing this person. But just the courage, the selflessness of those soldiers to go in and say, I have a mission. You know, my mission is not about math anymore. Yeah. It's not about 1 + 1 is 2. It's about caring for your team. It's about laying my life down, man. It's so inspirational.
And that's the bond, you know, that causes these guys to do great things. It's that, you know, that's why I think when they come out of the military, sometimes it's hard readjusting because it's like such a powerful camaraderie is formed when you're literally willing to lay down your life for your brother. And again, to see that and to see them celebrating, you know, there he is in the plane or helicopter as they're taking him to safety, and he's draped in his lap with an American flag, surrounded by his comrades. They're all laughing and cheering, and you know, it was a powerful image. You know, that I love my country. I love these guys I'm fighting with. You know, love our president, love our country. So anyway, I thought that was so good. And so ironic that he's shot down on Good Friday and found on Resurrection Sunday. That in and of itself is made for a movie. We got lots of movies. Maybe you and I should go into producing movies.
Yeah, no, I don't think.
Matthew, will you help us out on that?
Matt's
add that to Matthew's job description in his spare time.
Down his alley, yeah.
His spare time, he's going to help us with that. This is just a little. We always like to point out hypocrisy. Did you notice that the Obama Presidential Center in Chicago is opening this June, and they are requiring IDs? You don't have to have an ID to vote in Chicago. You don't. If you're a Democrat, you're not for providing IDs because it's impossible and it's racist and everything else. But that's what they tell us anyway. But they are restricting entry. I'm quoting here. To the grand opening ticket giveaway is only for U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents. And Kayleigh McEnany said, why do we have stricter standards for the Obama Library than for voting? Representative Brandon Gill from Texas replied, well, because Democrats would like to allow non-citizens to vote in American elections, which is the obvious. So we're still fighting the whole FACE Act and what is common sense, I think, to...
Save Act.
What's that? Yeah, Save Act. Yeah. Common sense to... What was 90% of Americans? I mean, we have to have IDs everywhere, including the Obama Presidential Library, which I'm glad they're showing IDs. I'm for IDs, but they can't seem to connect the dots logically to why we need to have IDs to be able to vote. Anyway, I thought that was more democratic insanity, and I think the American people are seeing through it. We had some amazing things to celebrate this last week, though. One was the Supreme Court breaking transgenderism's stranglehold over therapy in Colorado. So the Supreme Court rightly held that Colorado's ban on conversion therapy violated the First Amendment by dictating what counselors say in therapy sessions. In other words, Colorado's law didn't just, this was the negative side, that didn't just aim to force therapists to endorse transgender orthodoxy. It also claimed to prevent kids from receiving the best kind of treatment for gender dysphoria, the painful and persistent identification with the gender opposite of one's sex. So this was really, really good because they basically put a muzzle on anybody doing counseling. And if somebody came to you struggling with gender dysphoria, you were not able to talk with them about becoming consistent in their own mind with their body, their gender with their body or their sex with their body. If you tried to do that, because the idea was, again, they're born that way. They can't change. This is an immutable characteristic, and it's actually cruel. The argument, as we've heard it, goes, if you don't affirm that young person's identity, then they're going to commit suicide. And we've heard that that toxic empathy argument, right? We just have to embrace it. And so it went so far, the logic went so far to say that if you're a boy and you think you're a girl, then we're going to medically try to create a female plumbing system for you in a male's body, which of course is impossible. And so we had these horrific gender mutilating surgeries that were taking place, followed by a lot of pain, a lot of confusion. In fact, what they found was that after all of this treatment, the kids were more likely to commit suicide than they were before the treatment. So the treatment made things even worse, to the contrary argument of what those on the left say. Activists said this was the only path, but scientific studies, as I just mentioned, suggest that suicidal thoughts actually increase when minors take drugs to block puberty. So let's talk about that a little bit. Why is this that suicidal thoughts increase when boys are trying to become girls or girls are trying to become boys? From a biblical standpoint, what's your take on it? Is it lack of affirmation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear from a biblical standpoint that it's not a mistake that you were made into this body. The body you've been given is holy because it's made by God, and the gender you've been given is holy because it's dictated by God. You know, and
there are reasons for kids to struggle with this. But to try to go against the creative order is crazy. It's like trying to deny gravity or some other natural order. It's just nuts. It doesn't work. This is also interesting. Studies have found that kids are allowed to develop on their own without social affirmation of transgender identity. Between 65% and 94% of them resolve their gender dysphoria and end up at peace with their sexed bodies. So the whole idea here is if you just let this run its course, you're going to have kids that when they're young have some confusion, but it all works out and they end up becoming comfortable with who they are.
My question is just from this case, is there a precedent set about what you can dictate to people in therapy and counseling or not? Because this extends beyond just the T. There's also all other sexual orientation issues that has been perceived as the standards of counseling. So I wonder, does this open door for Christians who say, hey, you know what, this is not how I counsel, and what's their rights and what's their ability to speak on these issues? I don't know. It's very interesting.
No, that is a very good question. And I don't know that this article answers that. But I think it was, what, a 7-1 ruling? 8-1?
8-1 maybe.
8-1 ruling.
Which is pretty crazy at this point to have an 8-1.
Yeah. And
how divisive we are.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it shows you how that one is completely out of touch and probably shouldn't be sitting on the Supreme Court. We could get into her whole argument, which wasn't much of an argument. But anyway, I thought that was really, really good news. Now, we've got another issue that all of us as believers should be deeply concerned about, and as Americans, and that's this whole birthright citizenship argument that's coming up. And basically, this is going before the Supreme Court. The Trump administration is arguing that automatic birthright citizenship for children born to illegal immigrants or temporary foreign visitors is not required by the Constitution, and that current practice misreads the 14th Amendment. He is relying on 4 key words. It says it should, in our Constitution, should be limited to children whose parents are, quote, subject to the jurisdiction, end quote, of the United States in a full political sense. Those words are really important because he contends these are a real limitation, constitutional limitation, not just a meaningless phrase. Of course, being subject to jurisdiction is more than just being physically present. It implies exclusive allegiance, a lawful presence, and a political subjection to the United States of America. What are your thoughts on this? Because this has become, kind of a really big issue. There's whole industries that are created out of this notion that somehow if I can just have my baby in the borders of the United States, that baby becomes a citizen. It kind of goes against the whole process of citizenship. And as this administration is arguing, these folks are not even, the folks that are giving birth are not citizens of the United States. They're not lawful residents here. They're here either temporarily or illegally. And those children should not be automatically given citizenship. As if the argument, I think, is that it really, really cheapens what it means to be a citizen of the United States of America.
I haven't looked deeply into the arguments against. The arguments for interpreting the 14th Amendment as has always been. But the compelling argument you said right there, like to me, is very compelling. You have to be subject under the jurisdiction of. So if you're illegal, you are blatantly violating the rule. Why should I incentivize you to keep breaking our rules to do that. And when you're just a temporary visiting, are you subjecting yourself to the authority of the United States? We already have an integration problem. This puts the integration of what it means to be American, like this pour gasoline on fire for that, right?
Absolutely.
And so like we're a divisive nation because of all these different practices going on. So for me, both from the practical basis, this is not helping divisiveness America. From the constitutional, I'm not a constitutional attorney, but the reason you just mentioned there sounds right.
Well, here's exactly what you're talking about in terms of what's at stake. The policy argument is that birthright citizenship acts as a magnet for illegal immigration. So we're not going to help our illegal immigration problem. We're actually going to incentivize it. It incentivizes birth tourism, which I want to talk about in a moment, and border exploitation. And citizenship becomes, quote, transactional and not covenantal.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Solicitor General argued before the court, unrestricted birthright citizenship demeans the priceless and profound gift of American citizenship. What Trump is not proposing, he's not proposing revoking citizenship for existing Americans or ending citizenship for children of U.S. citizens or lawful permanent residents. What he is proposing is limits going forward and denying automatic citizenship to children born to parents unlawfully present or parents lawfully present only temporarily. In other words, they're not, official citizens of the United States. So let's talk a little bit about this tourism thing, because I had no idea the degree to which certain nations were exploiting this whole birth tourism. According to Fox News, over 500 Chinese firms operate and offer birth tourism packages. Those hundreds of firms facilitate people coming from the Chinese Communist Party to give birth here in the United States. What this means is we could see 1 million new voters by 2030 who are Communist Party voters. So the Chinese recognize they're going to use, and I'm not talking about the average Chinese person, I'm talking about the Chinese Communist government recognizes this is one of those legal loopholes that they're going to use. And if we have these leftist progressive morons, for lack of a better word, I think that's a pretty accurate word. By the way, I did use the word wuss correctly to refer. I looked it up. I did use the word wuss. Yeah, and I'm using moron correctly here as well. What we're doing is we're actually importing Communist Party, supporters to absolutely undermine our whole system of government. It's national suicide. Also, this article, interesting article, but it talked about how did all this begin happening. It happened under the Obama administration, and I can't get into all of that. But there's over 1,000 Chinese firms facilitating birth tourism in U.S. territories. 1.5 million U.S. Citizen children have been born to Chinese parents who then take their children home to grow up under the rule of the Communist Party. So
they get a U.S. passport. Citizens. They want to come to school here, they got a U.S. passport. They're good to go.
Yep, absolutely. A guy named Peter Schweitzer has written a book called The Invisible Coup, How American Elites and Foreign Powers Use Immigration as a Weapon. And I wanted to quote from what he had to say here. He argued before the Supreme Court to take action to defend U.S. citizenship. He says if the court comes back and says that birthright citizenship is absolute, that if you are here, you are within the borders, you are allowed to do this, he says, then we are in deep, deep, deep trouble. This is a serious national security concern that really demands attention. And he writes, I'm hoping the court is going to be able to be reasonable and recognize that the Constitution is not a suicide pact and that there should be the ability of the executive and legislative branches to put limitations on what birthright citizenship really means. The other thing that I wanted to mention was this whole thing of what it's called mass, what's the phrase? Where basically the kid becomes a citizen and then the whole family is allowed to come in
Chain migration.
Chain migration, that's the word. Chain migration, which is another crazy thing, where people would use that, again, to provide all kinds of access to the American system. That means benefits, support, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's going to destroy our support system, our safety net.
Yeah.
But you were saying you're not feeling good about this in terms of we're not going to maybe have 2 wins here. What's
in terms of the court case, yeah. What I've read is that based on how these Supreme Court justice questions, you can see their leanings. Guess what? They're humans too. They're not objective. They have their own biases, and the Supreme Court has made, to be fair, some pretty good decisions in general, but they are not like. I don't get it, man. I don't get the reason. Again, I'm not a constitutional scholar. I get that. But I read some report that says just by some of these indications that they're leaning to not go in our direction.
Evidently, this article here says, as of April 2026, the Supreme Court appears likely to rule against Trump.
Yeah.
Though the debate has been treated as serious and non-frivolous even by skeptical judges. Trump's case is basically fundamentally an originalist argument. Where he
don't like that.
Yeah, and they don't like originalist arguments. But basically, the argument goes something like this: the fact that this has been going on as it has been for a long period of time, therefore, must mean that it's legal. And again, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if you're allowing your enemies to exploit your laws, your immigration laws, it's only a matter of time before you just do the math and you're in big trouble.
Well, what's the original intent, right? Going back to the original intent.
Yeah, it was the Dred Scott case.
Yeah.
Allowing slaves to have the right to vote.
Yeah.
That's not what we're dealing with right now by any way, shape, or form, Anyway, so we need to keep an eye on that one because very, very important. And all of this, I guess, brings up a deep concern to me, and I wanted to touch on this as we're approaching a midterm. I'm just being reminded, I've got an article over here too. I guess this is a good entry into this, and then I'll share a little bit. But there's a guy named David, I think it's Daladin. He was the one who exposed Planned Parenthood back in the day. It's been a decade ago now. I thought this was going to be the death of Planned Parenthood. This guy did undercover videos with Planned Parenthood executives who were basically talking about the price that they were getting for the body parts of aborted babies. I mean, this is like Nazi-esque, disgusting, vile, demonic. I mean, it's one thing to kill a baby. It's another thing to kill a baby strategically to preserve the baby's organs, to sell them on the black market. And there's one video with an executive from Planned Parenthood joking around she wanted to get the best price possible because she wanted a Lamborghini. I mean, he's got all this captured on tape. When I saw the video, I thought, man, this is gonna put the stake in the heart of Planned Parenthood. Because I mean, how disgusting can you be? The Attorney General of the state of California was none other than Kamala Harris. When Kamala Harris was presented with the evidence against Planned Parenthood, she took the investigative reporter to court. And basically, the state of California has made this guy's life miserable for the last 10 years. He should be celebrated. If we love righteousness and hate what's evil, this guy should be celebrated. Instead, Kamala Harris and her ilk go after the one telling the truth and exposing the wickedness, which just causes, when I think this woman could have been President of the United States of America, it makes me shudder. This is an evil lady and an evil government and an evil ideology. Even their values of the left are. I never used to talk this way. You tried to be nonpartisan. I don't know how you can be nonpartisan anymore. And I've encouraged people to think about what we had in the last administration and what we could have. If this midterm comes up, and they're already talking about it, if the Democrats take over the House and the Senate, they're going to impeach President Trump. Again, impeach him on what, but they will make his life miserable. And it just reminded me of what's at stake. So Here in Indiana, first of all, praise the Lord, this guy's finally been vindicated. But here in Indiana, we had President Trump really encouraging, and that's a light word, because sometimes President Trump's encouragement I know is very strong, but he's smart. He recognizes what's at stake for America. Do we want to go backwards to what we had? Do we want to have a bunch of lawfare and all this stuff? I've got a document here I researched that just lists all of the attacks that our president has gone through from the left. And I won't go into all the details, but we got the Russian collusion hoax that came out. We've got the FBI and intelligence community weaponization. This banana republic behavior that eroded the trust of institutions that were supposed to be neutral. We had impeachment that was used as a political weapon. The first impeachment was Ukraine-related. The second impeachment was all about the January 6th incitement of insurrection, which is all a bunch of bogus nonsense. We had the lawfare attacks, criminal and civil prosecutions that were all meant to distract him and keep him in court so that he couldn't be elected. And again, these were selective prosecutions that were brought to damage him politically, many of which dissolved when judicial scrutiny was applied. Then we had the civil suits and financial warfare that was actually, when the civil system did not work and criminal law failed, they took another approach to attack the president. Of course, we had the media and information operations, where the press was functioning as an auxiliary enforcement arm of the left. So the press was nonstop negative reporting on our president. We had years of collusion headlines despite charges. We had the dismissal and later reversal of major narratives that they were speaking about that were not true. We had the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story before the 2020 election. It was later authenticated. So this just goes on and on, this whole information warfare that we have to deal with. And then let's not forget, our president had assassination attempts and physical threats multiple times. And so we had this rhetoric of demonization, demonizing our president that led to actual attempts on his life. I just saw, it never ends on the left. It just makes me sick. One of the headlines that I saw this week was on one of the Tonight Show or on Saturday Night Live. They made some joke about assassinating President Trump like Abraham Lincoln, and the whole audience cheered. I mean, these people are sick. They celebrate the murder of other Americans. They're sick. We had intimidation of his associates and his family, where basically, if anybody was related to Trump, they were terrorized as well. It all comes back like a bad dream to me. And then President Trump saying, hey, guys, we don't want to go here on the midterm. So Indiana, would you please redistrict, because you can gain 2 more seats. And we're not talking about crazy gerrymandering like Illinois. We could show the Illinois map and you can clearly see this is nuts. I mean, it goes all over the place. We're not talking about that. But we could just simply redistrict and get 2 more seats. Why were those seats important? Well, because where you hail from, right, in the state of Virginia,
yeah.
That wacko governor is looking at wiping out 4 Republican seats and having 0 Republican representation, in her state.
Yeah, and Virginia is essentially a 45-55 state.
Which
is have no Republican representation.
So it's the point being, you might not like that as a strategy, but if the left is doing it and getting away with it, you have to fight for your freedoms and your values and make sure that you're counteracting what they're doing. Otherwise, you're creating political suicide. So either as our Lieutenant Governor Michael Beckwith said recently at a gathering we were at when we were talking about this issue, he said, we're going to have to force the Supreme Court to come up with a fair system, because right now the left is and the Democrats are exploiting the system to the max, and it's based purely on power. My concern is, as it relates even to Indiana, why as a Republican Party would you not get behind a president who's been through the hell that I just introduced, from lawfare, assassination attempts, attacks on his finances, name and the rhetoric that's been spilled out on this guy. It's just been unbelievable. And you pointed out wisely when we were trying to sort through who is this man Donald Trump, right? You said just look at the intensity of the attacks against him. And if you're trying to figure out who's the most dangerous to the Washington establishment and to the system, that's the person that's going to be taking the heat and the attacks. If for no other reason, I believe Donald Trump, and I know you share this belief, is probably the biggest threat to the swamp. And we've seen nothing but an onslaught against him. Is he brazen? Yes. Is he arrogant at times? Yes. Is he abrasive at times? Yes. We're not talking about style. We're talking about policy. We're talking about loving America. We're talking about, doing what's right for our country. And I don't understand how our Indiana Senate completely dropped the ball, did not support the president's agenda, and in doing so, puts our entire nation at risk because of the balance of the House and the Senate. And so, right now in Indiana, we've got two members of our church that are running, and they're running for Senate positions. Jay Starkey and Trevor DeVries. They're running against two men that I would consider to be friends of mine, and they're not bad guys. But when it came to the redistricting issue, they completely bailed on it and voted wrong and really put our state at risk. I also want to say this. We had a chance in redistricting District Number 1, which has been a Democratic stronghold for years. We had a chance to actually take that district. And for those of us who have lived in Lake County and had to deal with the incompetence and corruption for all these years, that would have been a welcome thing to do. But instead, they went along with the party, dropped the ball on redistricting, and really are putting us in a precarious spot. When I'm reading headlines already about Democrats salivating over the opportunity to seize power and attack the president again, it just grieves me that because of Republicans' failure to see the bigger picture, now we're going to have to go back and face this wasted energy again. It's just attack, and it bogs the system down. And the agenda that we voted for overwhelmingly in this country is not going to be able to be implemented because our president is going to be fighting for his political life. And that really, really bugs me. It makes me irate, actually, when I think back at what we went through for those 4 years under Harris and Biden and what we could have been facing under Harris and Walz. Can you imagine what that would be like? Anyway, I ranted a little bit there, but I guess I just want to say the midterms coming up really, really matters. It matters to Indiana. It matters that we send a message to our supermajority of Republican leadership in this state that they're being very myopic and nearsighted, and they're missing the bigger picture of the hell that we're going to be going through if we have the wrong people in power. And that's not like a hyperbole here. We went through hell for 4 years. We watched our liberties trampled. I don't want to be there again. But if we don't have good leadership, that's right where we may end up.
Well said. Well said. I think wise as innocent as dove, wise as serpent. And I this kind of gentlemanly Republican, like, yeah, we're not going to get our hands dirty. Like, how has that worked out for the Republican Party? Yeah. I mean, it's led to complacency, So I'm with you on that. I mean, I think it's time for us to get into the battle, get into the fight. Now, I would love to hear some practical reasoning why, but again, I don't get it. I don't see it.
No, sometimes I think it's political egos. No one in D.C. is going to tell us how to vote. Blah blah blah. We talk about we're going to act on principle. Okay, what principle are you acting on? It's not illegal to do redistricting when your enemies are using it to literally destroy you and push policies that the average American finds revolting. Why don't you have some guts? Why don't you have a backbone? Why don't you stand up and fight fire with fire instead of just being, the incumbent, right? Who doesn't have to worry about my seat, or the people in my district, blah 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 blah. You got elected to lead, and you got elected because hopefully you stood on these principles, like lead and do what's right for the larger picture. That's what frustrates me. And so again, while some of these folks are my personal friends, this is a line that is so big and a misstep that is so huge. I'm encouraging voters not to overlook this, because this really, really matters. And I don't want to go back to the hell we faced for 4 years, because I'm telling you, they're relentless on the left. They're wicked. They do not share our worldview, and it's dangerous when they're in power. It's dangerous for all of us.
I'll say.
All right. Well, the good news, I didn't have time to get this. Revivals are breaking out all over college campuses. People are getting baptized, publicly declaring their love for Jesus. That's the hope of America. But it's not enough. I just want to say this last thing. It's not enough just to have a bunch of Christian people that are excited about Jesus. At some point, the Great Commission requires that we get engaged and make disciples of nations, which means we need to be leading, and we need to be using our worldview to influence others. We need to be in positions of leadership, not just governmentally, but across the board. That's the end game that we're after. So I hope all this revival translates into people that are very, very excited about leading and using the gifts God's given them to impact our culture. So,
all said.
All right. Until we meet again, we'll look forward to seeing you guys next Thursday. All right. Have a great week.